been in a toxic relationship? Or maybe you're in one currently. Would you like to recognize what a toxic relationship is and develop skills to bring awareness to what those behaviors are, as well as take back your mental health well-being? Well, today we're going to be talking about all of that with awareness coach Teresa Lodato. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Coffee Chat. I'm here with Teresa Lodato. Hey, Teresa, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you, Jen?
I'm doing really good. This is another treat. This week we get to talk brain and mindset, and we're even weaving in some toxic relationship talk and learning how to trust today. I'm excited about that. So you're all in for a very big treat today. Before we dive in, did you want to give a little background on yourself for those that don't know you?
Sure. So Teresa Lodato is my name. I am a professional certified coach. I'm also have a certification in relational trauma as well as neurotransformational coaching. And so my graduate work was in psychology and neuroscience, and my undergraduate was in finance, which doesn't seem to really be relevant, but when I talk about relational trauma, I love to bring in examples in the workplace because I think that's one of the places that we often forget that there's a lot of toxicity in the culture, and that really impacts how teams work, as well as how people feel. You know, a lot of people get burnt out when they're just being constantly drained. So a little bit of background.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And then, so I wanted to touch with you before we get into it. So that the word toxic gets thrown a lot. I can't talk. The word toxic is thrown around a lot. There, Jen got a sentence out. But how do you really define toxicity? Because everybody has different belief systems, right? We are all raised differently. So somebody's version of toxic might be fine with someone else, depending on where you live in the world. So how do you actually know what toxic is, or is that just an individual personal thing to everyone?
Yeah, well, I think there are definitely some key elements that, well, let me take a step back. I like to think of toxic relationships as anything that interferes with connection. So that's a really bottom line, easy thing. So anything that is going to interfere with connection between two people, but between a person and a situation, it can create toxicity. And when I think of people who I would identify as toxic, they are people who are controlling, are manipulative, are more centered on themselves and their own well-being versus the benefit of everyone. And the thing is that a lot of people will say, well, I care about my family. I care about, my spouse, my kids, my immediate family, but I'm not as big concerned about the general population. That in of itself isn't toxic. So I think that sometimes goes along cultural beliefs or traditions that people hold, or even separate beliefs that they hold. However, a true toxic person is going to be toxic in every single one of their relationships. So they may say, yeah, I don't care about the greater whole. It's about my family. But even in the family, there's a loss of connection. There's a lot of control, manipulation, quick to anger. I mean, there are lots of qualities of toxic personalities.
Yeah. Okay. And then so you mentioned personalities. Now, can anyone be toxic, or is it based in people that either have grown up that way or maybe have a personality disorder? Is toxic only defined in people with behavioral disorders, or can everyone have a little bit of toxic, or what's the whole spectrum there?
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. And I think that neuroscientists and psychologists are actively studying some of the more toxic personality styles. Narcissism, of course, is a big one, sociopath and psychopaths. The interesting thing that neuroscience is discovering is that people who have a toxic personality, and once again, that's
Mhm.
narcissist, sociopath, psychopath. Narcissist is kind of the
Yeah.
big one that people talk about these days. What they are
Mhm.
learning is that their brains are actually wired differently. So the neural connections
Okay.
that are happening in their brains are not linking to empathy. And so there's no
Mhm.
response and no connection to empathy. And now a lot of
Okay.
narcissists can be very skilled. They know what empathy looks like because they,
Yeah.
quote, target it unconsciously,
Mhm.
but they don't feel the empathy. And I think that's kind of the
Okay.
defining characteristic.
Yeah. I love how you just brought that up too, because the film that I'm writing that I'm going to be producing this year is called The Emotional Terrorist, based on somebody who's married to
Oh,
somebody with narcissistic personality disorder. So I
love
love that
it.
you just went into that. uh, so when somebody's in a relationship
We're
with
geeking
somebody who
out here.
has we're geeking out. We're totally geeking out. For those of you just joining us, uh, so for those who are in a relationship, I should stop smiling for this part. For those who are in a relationship with somebody with a personality disorder, they can't actually change them, can they? So like some people are like, oh, like I'm gonna give them another chance. Oh, they'll change eventually. Oh, they'll get therapy and then they'll be better. Is that even possible with somebody with a personality disorder that's toxic?
Yeah, well, let me just tease out a little
Mhm.
bit. There's narcissistic
Okay.
personality disorder, which is a clinical
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis that
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately isn't isn't really used a whole lot because narcissists don't typically
Yeah.
seek therapy. They typically don't go
Okay.
for help. But
Yeah.
what I like to think, and what I've seen from the research and kind of my train of thought, is
Mm-hmm.
that narcissism is kind of on a spectrum. There's
Okay.
people who have um, I think that the general consensus right now among psychologists is that if a narcissist could get into therapy and was actually
Mm-hmm.
interested in learning how
Mm-hmm.
to develop those neural pathways and to be able to
Mm-hmm.
connect with their empathy, that they can somewhat
Mm-hmm.
improve. However, most narcissists aren't going to go to therapy. They don't think anything's wrong.
Right.
So, to that
Right.
extent, I think the general consensus right now is that narcissists can't be changed. And I know there are a
Okay.
lot of people. I mean, I work out with stressed out people pleasers, and
Mm-hmm.
so often they are involved in toxic relationships because that's what
Mm-hmm.
narcissists and toxic personalities, they love the people that are giving to them. They love the people that are acknowledging them, that are willing to be flexible so that they can have their own way, that are
Mm-hmm.
willing to go along.
Yeah.
Excellent relationship traits. And I think that's the thing that I feel
Mm.
like I want to scream from the rooftops is, if you
Yeah.
are in a toxic personality relationship or in relationship with a
Yeah.
toxic personality, give yourself a lot of
Mm.
credit because, hey, you must have some
Yeah.
incredible relationship skills because
Okay.
they're drawn to you.
Okay. So that makes me feel better because I was in two relationships with people that were very they were they would be classified probably as an NPD if they ever went and actually got like diagnosed. Yes. So that makes me feel better. But it's hard too because you're like sometimes when you're in those relationships you're like, oh, is it really that bad, right? Am I really seeing this? Is this actually really happening, or is this in my head, right? And that's where like the whole
Yeah.
like gaslighting comes in, the manipulation, and it's like it gets into your head and you're sitting there going, wait, it's not that bad. No, they didn't really mean
Mhm.
that. Oh no, they said they're going to change. It's going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. There
and that's
is
where
a
that you're writing a book. Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, we'll come back to that. There's a model
Yeah.
called the dawn to dawn model, and it's all
Okay.
about how people bring in their awareness. There's kind of various
Yeah.
awareness stages of
Yeah.
not knowing that you're in a relationship with a toxic personality, and then
Yeah.
realizing, you know what,
Mm.
this isn't right. Like, this seems a little off.
Uh-huh.
And you start to wake
Yeah.
up to the fact that these are things that are affecting your self-worth, that are making you think that
Yeah.
there's something wrong. And that's what narcissists are so skilled
Yeah.
at, is making you the bad guy
Yeah.
and making it seem like it's all
Yeah.
your fault. And you keep trying to change, but it's
Mhm.
never going to change. And so I think that's
Yeah.
the impetus, and bringing it back to what you were starting to say. Yeah, my second book
Yeah.
is Learning to Trust, because it really is about learning to
Yeah.
trust yourself.
Yeah. And I love how you just said that too, because the other thing that happens is that once you start to recognize the behaviors, then it becomes kind of like a war in your head. It's like, oh, well, that's gaslighting. Oh, well, that's manipulation. Oh, they're projecting there, right? But even though you're recognizing the behaviors, you're still talking yourself out of staying in it because there's this whole like trauma bonding thing that I've read about, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Your brain gets addicted to the trauma bond. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hormones, and adrenaline,
Yeah.
dopamine, that get
Yeah.
released when we get.
Mm.
There was a song years ago. You're way too
Mm.
young for it, and I'm trying to remember the woman's name who sang it, but the refrain was "Shake the sugar tree." Like, I have to shake the sugar tree to feel your
Okay.
love falling
Yeah.
all around me, is the refrain. And I always think about that
Yeah.
with toxic relationships, because it's really about like trying to shake the person to say, just give me a little bit of love or affection
Yeah.
or validation. And
Yeah.
it will come when they choose to do it, and when it
Yeah.
is
Hoovering.
appropriate for
Yeah.
them, like when it benefits them.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
it's really about that awakening awareness of, okay, what's
Mm.
going on? Is this healthy? If it's not,
Mm. Mm.
take that perspective and broaden it so that you can
Yeah.
protect
I love how you
yourself.
say what they'll give you love when they feel like it, because that's a tricky slope, because then you're like, okay, well, they're being nice right now. They're being loving right now. They're hugging. They're giving you gifts and stuff. Is this hoovering, or do they mean it,
Hmm.
right? And then, but you
Hmm.
start to notice patterns, and the patterns means that they probably don't mean it, because it's the same pattern every single time that happens. It's like hurt and rescue, hurt and rescue, hurt and rescue. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. There is,
Yeah.
and that's the cycle. That's the toxic cycle,
Yeah.
is being able
Yeah.
to, um, you know,
Mm.
brandish you with love and
Yeah.
affection and then take it away.
Yeah.
And that's not real
Yeah.
love,
And
you know?
yeah. No, it's not. Not, damn it. So I know I'm like joking right now, but it, like, seriously, if you're in a relationship like that, it's kind of like hell. It's like living in hell, right? So I know
Absolutely.
I'm joking right now. I'm trying to make light of it because we're talking right now, but like it actually, it's so emotionally draining. And I've seen studies now where they've shown that when you're in these types of relationships, the kids end up with brains like they've gone to war if they have parents
Mhm.
that are constantly fighting, and the adult, the mom, or the sometimes it's the dad. I think narcissistic personality is more common in males than females, but the person who's being subjected to the abuse, um, the hippocampus of the brain starts to shrink, right? Which means they can handle
Yeah.
like less stress. Yeah.
Well, and there's, the prefrontal
Mm.
cortex. I mean, all aspects of the brain are
Yeah.
affected. And I
Yeah.
think the
Mm.
most damaging, especially for children in that situation, is in the foundational
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah.
The neural pathways get coded by, I think the word is myelin. I'm blanking on it, but it's
Mm.
like an extra coating around the neural pathways, so that it really makes it
Okay.
strong
Mm.
pathways, and it makes it
Yeah.
later on in years harder to change those neural pathways, because they've got this thick
Okay.
lining essentially around them. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing that I'm not sure about there being more men than women, because it's not
Mm.
really uh, diagnosed, because narcissists, we
Mm.
really don't know how many. I think the latest
Mm.
research I read, it was around like 25 to 30% of the population. I'm kind of
Yeah.
of the mindset that it could be a little bit more of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the thing is we're never really going to know, and it's difficult to study,
Mm-hmm.
because once again,
Mm.
narcissists don't typically come forward for help. So
Right.
there's
Right.
a lot of
Mm.
theorizing, and there's a lot of
Mm.
trying to understand this. But yeah, it's definitely
Mm.
something to be aware of. And absolutely,
Mm.
anyone who is involved with a narcissist is
Mm.
going to have kind of those PTSD type symptoms, to a certain
Yeah.
extent. So it's really a challenging
Okay.
situation.
Yeah, but you're writing a book that could possibly help people dealing with toxic relationships, correct? Called Learning to Trust.
Yes, yes. It's, it's something that, my ex-husband, it was a toxic
Mm,
marriage. I've had
mm,
family members, I've had people that I've worked
mm.
with, even clients that my clients typically aren't narcissists. There was one I worked with, and
Yeah.
yeah, there's no
Mm.
change there. Like, why are you even here? But
Right.
it's something that I deal with all
Mm,
the time in my work. And the thing
mhm,
that there's so many things that I've learned through working with all the clients as well as my own life. And
mm,
number one, just their stories being heard. I think that's so
mhm.
important for people that are dealing with toxic relationships, is just being
Mhm.
validated and being heard,
Yeah.
and hearing their story and acknowledging,
Mm,
yeah, no, you're not crazy. Yeah, no, this is
mm.
this is actually stereotypical classic behavior.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is really learning to trust
Mm,
yourself and learning to trust
mm.
those, how your body reacts. I know for me, when I'm
Yeah.
around a narcissist, even if it's a stranger
Mm,
and I'm not aware that they're a
yeah.
narcissist, it will trigger a
Mm.
migraine or migraine like effects for me. Now, that's something that I'm
Okay.
aware of in my own body. Other people
Yeah.
might get really bad stomach cramps or might
Mm.
just feel really tense. Different people will
Yeah.
experience that stress in their body, but it's their body
Mm.
saying, hey, wait a minute, this is not
Yeah.
normal. Pay attention to me. And I
Mm.
think a lot of people
Yeah.
gloss over that because they're not tuning into themselves, and they're not trusting their bodies. They're not trusting themselves.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of
Yeah.
outward focus. So the book is really about bringing that focus back inward.
Yeah. I understand that because when like somebody who's toxic walks into the room, I almost feel like all of a sudden it gets like really heavy in the room. Yeah. It's like a weight just also
Yeah.
goes. Phew. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
totally get
Great
that.
awareness.
Um,
Great awareness.
mm. Yeah. It's the energy that people give off, right? Like certain people have certain energies that bring them into the room because we're bioelectric magnetic beings, right? We give off electricity in our feelings and everything it comes out of us. The double slit experiment is a really great example of how that
Oh,
works.
love that. I talk about that all the time.
For
Oh,
those of
well,
you who
here we
want to
are
check it out, I'll
geeking
put a
out some
link right
more.
here. Yeah, I'll put a link to the double slit experiment here if anyone wants to check it out. But yeah, like the double slit experiment is a prime example of how our moods and the energy we're giving off can change a situation, right? So like if you
Absolutely.
feel like the energy in the room shift, it's probably because it actually physically is.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really love about the double slit
Mm.
experiment is
Yeah.
the introduction of awareness, of the
Yeah.
observation, and
Mm.
just the observation, how that can change the way the energy
Mm.
is moving. So just with our
Yeah.
awareness, which is a huge thing that I also work with clients, is really learning
Mm.
how to have that neutral observer perspective, to be able to separate
Right.
yourself out and kind of witness what's happening, because that's when you
Mm.
start getting a more clear
Mm.
understanding, and you can have fresh perspectives
Mm.
that way as well. So
Yeah.
it's just so huge that that
It
we
is.
now have scientific proof
Mm.
of what we've always
Mm.
known will work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love there's this saying, you are where your attention is, right? So
Mhm.
when you start to notice these things, it's hard to unnotice them because then your brain starts forming like new neural pathways going, oh, okay, now I recognize that, now I recognize that, now I recognize that. But the problem becomes, I think, when you're in that type of relationship, is that how do you get out of it, right?
Mhm.
So does your book go into breaking the trauma bond and stuff and getting out of that stuff besides becoming aware?
Yeah, it will touch some
Mm,
on that. There's actually a
mm,
really good
mm,
psychologist that I follow. Her name is
mm.
Dr. Ramani. And
Okay.
she, gosh, this is like her expertise area is narcissists and
Mm,
toxic relationships. So anyone that wants to
mm,
learn more about the various types of narcissism,
mm,
because there's several types. I think there's like six that I can think of off the top of my
mm,
head. And a lot of
mm.
times people will dismiss, oh, they're not a narcissist
Yeah.
because they're not the typical grandiose narcissist. But there are so many
Yeah.
different types, and that more awareness
Mm,
we have so that we can recognize it, the more we are
mm,
able to set healthy boundaries And so,
Right.
that I go into in the book, but I really,
Mm.
turn to Dr. Romani and
Mm.
other experts in
Mm.
their field to really dive
Mm.
in deeper. But definitely, yeah, we touch on those things in the
Mm.
book. It's also
Yeah.
important to just be able to,
Mm.
like I said, set those healthy boundaries, but having that
Mm.
awareness is
Mm.
really the key. And so that's really the
Mm.
focus of my book, is becoming more aware and learning to
Okay.
trust yourself so that you can
Mm.
exist in a world, because our jobs
Mhm.
as people isn't to
Mm.
change other people. Our jobs as
No.
people is to change ourselves and to be the best version of
Right.
ourselves. And so how we're best able to do that is when we are a little bit detached from people
Mm.
who can drain our energy, and we're able to set those healthy boundaries, and we're able to trust ourselves
Right.
so that we know who to be in
Mm.
relationship with, and who to avoid when we need to keep our
Right.
energy safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a big one that people really need to get, is that you can't change someone. They're the only ones who can change themselves. Right? And if they don't want to do
Absolutely.
it, they're not going to do
Absolutely.
it. Right. So I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
that's a huge one, especially, and I think you learn that as you grow and you mature,
Hmm.
right?
Hopefully.
You learn, you grow, you mature, and you figure things out, and then and then you repeat. New level, new
Yeah.
devil.
Well, and there are, the wonderful thing is that so many younger people are so much more aware.
Mm,
And so they're coming
mhm,
into these lives and
mm,
into relationships, and they have so much more awareness, and there's so much more information
mm.
that's accessible and readily available.
Right.
So there's this huge opportunity to
Mm.
nip it in the bud, instead of people who
Yeah.
are my generation and older, who are more
Mm,
set in their ways,
mm,
and just they don't understand how the brain
mm.
and the body work together. The younger
Yeah.
generation is much more prepared
Mm.
to absorb that information and really integrate it into their lives.
Yeah. And when you're talking about setting boundaries too, I think a lot of people have a hard time with that, because it's literally forming a new habit. Because you've gotten used to participating in this habit. And that's one of the reasons New Year's resolutions fails, because nobody knows how to form new habits properly. So I think that's where like NLP or CBT or people probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Neurolinguistics programming, cognitive behavioral therapy, or like things like self-hypnosis are really great at helping people form new habits, which can help them form these boundaries, right? Because if you don't know how the brain works and you can't form the new habit, then you're just going to go right back to the other habit. So I think like awareness
Yeah,
is key, but I think they need to learn also how to form that new boundary. Mm,
absolutely. Well, and I think that
mm,
there's
mm,
there are a lot of people who are of the idea that you can
mm,
change your thoughts and it will change your behaviors,
mm,
which,
mm,
yeah, that's true.
mm,
However, I
mm.
really feel that there's a level beneath that. It's really
Yeah.
about having
Mm,
that awareness and being able to
mm,
shift that perspective, because once you shift the
mm,
perspective, then the thoughts
mm.
change, then the behaviors change. It's
Yeah.
kind of like that's really the
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah.
You
Change the
can
way you
you
look
can
at things
change
and
your
the
thoughts.
yeah.
Yeah, you can change your
Yeah.
thoughts, but if you still have that
Yeah.
same belief underneath, nothing's going to
Yeah.
change, because your subconscious, those neural
Yeah.
pathways are going to go back to
Mm.
that old patterning time after time. And I think another
Yeah,
thing
because they're
that
stronger.
because they're stronger. And I think another thing that
Mm.
is being proven in neuroscience is that the
Mm.
brain, its job is to protect us, to
Mm.
keep us safe. I mean, that really is what the
Right.
brain's job is. And so, what the
Mm.
brain does is when it gets new information, if it doesn't know what to do with it,
Mm.
then it can kind of like hang out there figuratively, right? In
Right.
your head. And because the brain, what it does is it actually predicts. It's the prediction
Mm.
process. It predicts what's going to happen,
Yeah.
and then it responds. So it's not responding and then
Yeah.
changing. So
Mm.
if you
Yeah.
are in a
Your brain knows what
relationship
it's
with a
going to do before
toxic
you do.
person, yeah, if you're in a relationship with a toxic person, your brain is going to start to
Yeah.
predict that this is how that person's going to behave. This is how they're going to
Yeah.
treat you. And then it starts
Mm.
releasing all the stress chemicals and all the hormones in your
Yeah.
body that are
Yeah.
telling your body, hey, something serious is going on. That's why it's so important to listen to your
I think
body,
that.
because if you're getting those, then that's
Yeah.
a big early warning sign
Yeah.
that, hey, something is amiss. So
Yeah, I think that's what she's saying.
understanding that process. Yeah. Understanding that process is huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing is understanding the process, and once you become aware of those patterns, like I said, it's hard to unsee them, right? Of it.
Right,
And then
right.
it's learning how
And
to
that's the
deal
shift of
with the next
perspective.
step. Yeah,
Right. And that's the
yeah. Zig
power of that
Ziglar said,
perspective
change.
shift.
Yeah, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Yeah, Zig
Exactly.
Ziglar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
and it makes
years
much
before its
more
time.
sense now. I know we keep
Exactly.
laughing, but we're just making light of the situation. Otherwise, it's
Well,
just like a really heavy
it's a heavy
episode.
topic. Yeah, exactly. It's such a heavy topic. And that's the thing that also I think a lot of people fail to bring into their lives is the
Yeah,
sense of joy and play. And
yeah, right,
that really helps keep your vibration high. It helps to,
right,
just like music affects our mood, joy and
mm,
laughter helps keep that mood
mm,
up. And it is a very serious topic. However,
right,
being able to absorb the information, if we're having a really
mm,
serious topic and it's starting to stress people
mm,
out, you can't learn, you can't absorb when you are
yeah,
stressed. And so
and
being
close
able to
off.
keep it,
Yeah,
yeah, being able to keep it a little bit lighter, playful, joyful,
mm,
that keeps us a little
mm,
bit more open, tells our bodies, hey, don't
mm,
stress out. And then we can absorb, we
mm,
can learn. So,
right,
yes, and it is important for the learning process.
right. Yeah, I that's really good information too. That your body learns better when you're not stressed out because your body's in fight or flight, right? When you're stressed out,
Yeah,
right? And it's focused on
absolutely.
survival when you're stressed out. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
nothing is going to change or do anything. In fact, I just
mm,
read it was, this is slightly off topic, but it is in the relationship realm, that when
yeah.
your sex hormones aren't released
Mm.
when you're stressed.
Oh,
Oh my
really?
gosh, that was like mind blowing to me in that research. It's like,
Huh.
okay, so when you're stressed out,
Yeah.
your sex
Mm,
hormones aren't working properly because your body can't release
yeah.
both at the same time. So I think about
Yeah.
all the women that I've known in the past who have tried to get pregnant and they're all stressed out about
Yeah.
trying to get pregnant. Well, they're probably
Yeah.
not getting pregnant because their sex
Mm.
hormones aren't doing their job because the stress
Mm.
hormones are really kind of ruling the show. So, that just kind of
Well, that
brings
makes
it all
sense.
back to,
Yeah.
yeah, it makes total sense.
Because
It's
your
just like,
body,
oh my gosh.
yeah, because your body goes into survival mode, so then it shuts down anything it doesn't need, right? Because
Exactly.
it's focused
Exactly.
on conservation. So that's why a lot of people lose their period when they're going through like high stress situations because
Or hold
their
on to
body's
weight
focused
or
on
do
just keeping
anything.
them. Yeah. Yeah. That
Keeping
makes
them
total
alive.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, you
So
learn
if you
something
think
all the
about
time
that,
on Coffee Chat.
even how to get pregnant, kind of.
We are not
But it is.
responsible for your getting people pregnant or not getting people pregnant.
Yes, yes. We are not doctors. We are not endorsing. It's educational
Yeah,
only.
we're just talking and providing information.
Yes.
um, but yeah, that makes sense. Because yeah, if you're stressed out, then you can't absorb anything. Your body goes into survival mode, and yeah. So if you want to learn something, relax and be happy.
Absolutely. Relax
Mm,
and
mm,
remember too that your brain, like I
yeah.
said, its job is to keep
Mm,
you safe. Its job is to
right.
keep you alive. That's really the
Mm-hmm.
only job of the brain. I mean, in
Right.
very simplistic terms, obviously, right? But there's
Yeah.
so much more information that our bodies hold and that our
Mm,
bodies
yeah.
learn from. I mean, just the research
Mm,
that they've been learning about the gut brain connection and how our gut actually has a lot of the neurons that
mm.
are that communicate with the brain. Once again, makes total
Yeah, it's all
sense.
your
Of
memory.
course,
Yeah.
your body
Yeah.
has to have that information to transmit to the brain. However,
Yeah.
that also tells us that your gut really informs
Mm,
a lot of things.
yeah.
Well, yeah, duh.
Mm,
Even with me and migraines,
yeah.
you might think migraines are all in the head. There's a gut brain
Mm,
connection. The nausea, the
yeah.
GI discomfort that happens with migraines. that's all being traveling up and down the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is, the transporter of information. When it is stressed out, when it's concerned about sending out cortisol and adrenaline and, preparing you to either fight, flight, or freeze, of course, it's not going to be taking the other information back.
Right.
It makes total sense.
Why would it? Of course it does. But that's so interesting too, though, to know that. Yeah. So before I let you go, I really want people to be able to find your book. So could you tell everyone where they can get a hold of your book, where they can follow you for more information? Because I know you have lots of other things that people can get involved in your business as well to learn more about this stuff.
Sure. Well, Learning to Trust is not released as of yet. It's going to be coming out later this year. I do have a book out, Why Aren't You Listening to Me? That's available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, blah, blah, blah. But Learning to Trust, keep that in mind going down, because that's in the works. As far as getting in touch with me, my website is probably the best place. I'm actually involved in an app. It's called Owwll, Owwll, and it's in the beta stages right now, but it's a team of experts. And so basically I'm on there as one of the experts. It's, you can call in during my office hours, and, you pay a nominal fee, and you can talk to me and you can discuss anything you want. It's basically like having a coach in your hip pocket is how I like to explain it to people.
That's really cool.
So I'll have that information on my website that people can go to and find information, download the app, and be able to search me as well as other experts. I mean, there's experts in there that are actors and, give advice on acting or how to get different things. There's attorneys in there. There's all sorts of experts. But that's so probably the best way to actually talk with me. I'm on the socials. I'm not active a whole lot on the socials. I'm working on my own app as well that will be released, the Becoming Aware app. That will have my free community, and that will be another place for people to really reach me, have that value added, place. Because I can't, working with clients, I can't be on all the different social media all the time.
Social media is a full-time job.
Yes. Get my assistant to do it.
That's so cool. Congrats on your upcoming app. That's really neat. I can't wait to see it.
I know. I'm very excited about this. This has been a dream that I've been working on for quite a while, just because I know my clients, they don't want to be on social media. They're looking to take that breath and get away and have a place where they can get a lot of value without having to, get distracted and be able to go in and leave when they choose to. There's also been research on social media, I'm sure you've heard of, kind of that dopamine hit that you get every time.
I watched the whole social experiment documentary.
Exactly. So, this is an opportunity to really disengage that so that we can really drop in and reset all our hormones so that we can be in better balance. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, this has been such a treat. I hate to let you go.
It's been so nice chatting with you, Jen.
So make sure to go and follow Teresa on her profiles, her social, but she's not completely 100% active there. And go check her out on the Owwll app and her upcoming app soon. I'll put all the links in the description below. And again, thank you so much for joining me. This has been, again, such a treat.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
All right. Have an amazing day. Bye, everybody. My cup of tea right now. I just finished doing neuro-linguistics programming training. So how does one go about even knowing that they need this type of help, right? One of a kind.
little Travolta here.
Inside my head, Lizzie. So when Lizzie's being bad, I'd be like, shush, Lizzie. No, we don't want to go there. Stay up.
Move your ass and then move your ass. This is as spiritual as it gets.
Thank you. All right, bye, everybody.